So you knew this moment would eventually come, right? Yeah. The end of the day. And I have to apologize. Being a salesman, there would have been an open bar, but because there's a salesman here, they cannot do that, so it was just wine tasting. But I hope to, at the end of this talk, leave you with the realization that this is not the end, right? You came to something for a reason. You came to be motivated, inspired, and that's the purpose of this talk today. So what is next? The next stage in sales, marketing, and communication. And being a salesman, I have, my favorite world leader, cigar smoking, scotch swilling Churchill. As he said, the farther back you can look, the farther forward you are likely to see. So let's take a trip back to see how sales and marketing and communication began, and see where we are today, and see where we're heading next. Are you ready for that little journey? So let's go back to the beginning. It took how many gallons of water to make that apple? I don't know. I was too nervous getting ready for my talk, so I didn't pound it. 53, was it 53? The serpent sold Eve on the goodness of that apple, right? And then Eve sold Adam. And then Adam did what all men do. He blamed it on the wife, right? But I digress. That's another topic. So selling and persuasion existed from the beginning of mankind. Jumping forward, I don't know, a couple thousand years to Babylonian history. What was that? 1772, roughly. This big stone they found, the Code of Hammurabi. Over half of it dealt with contracts. Okay? And if you look at section 197, paragraph 18, right there, it says, be nice to your salesman. All right? So literally half of this stone, thousands of years ago, dealt with contracts, and which meant people doing business. How should people treat one another in commerce to have a conducive, friendly, peaceful economy and society? Jumping forward again, we look at Homer and Odyssey. I don't know any kid that's really, has anybody really read this, or we just all read like the Cliff Notes? I don't know. A couple people read it. All right. Odysseus sneaks in as a merchant, all right, to get into the palace, to distract some of the folks there. Now, this could be the beginning of the animosity towards salespeople, because he was pretending to be a merchant. He was not a real merchant, okay? Because, as Jim said in the introduction, real salespeople, we're lovers, not fighters, all right? That's why we have 6.5 kids. So April's a big month in our family. Continuing on, Columbus. We would not be here if this Italian was not persistent enough and creative enough to convince the Queen and the King of Spain to give him some money to prove that the world was not flat. Okay? Selling and persuasion and convincing is part of our DNA. It's really, I think, what we were meant to do. Going back to the Bible, if you look at, if they say God is love, how can there be love without someone else to love? Right? It's where you get into the whole Father, Son, Holy Spirit thing, which I could, again, digress into. But that's why I say from the beginning, we were meant to have community and to get along with that community. And anyone that's been married realizes to get along, you must communicate. And that communication is the beginning of selling and persuading and convincing. Jumping ahead to America, the old general store, right? That's where everyone came together to catch up on news, see who was doing well, who was sick, who had a baby, who had a fence torn down in the latest flood and needed some help, catch up on the news, right? As folks traversed the nation, they would get insight from the Pony Express or whomever. But again, we came together as community to see what was going on, to catch up. But in 1926, selling in America changed. In 1926, NBC began broadcast radio. After that, not too long after that, CBS, ABC. So Guy talked about boxes earlier, right? That's when a little box started shouting at us, and we went back to our box. Instead of coming into community, we went home to the box, and we were told what to believe and what to listen to for 50 years. Because by 1946, television came out, so then obviously another big box. So the big companies that had the money to buy the big broadcasting and pay the Madison Avenue folks for catchy phrases and jingles told us what to eat, what to drive, what to wear, how to keep up with the Joneses. And I truly believe that's where the cheesy, pushy salesman and that animosity we have towards sales came to be. Because it was driven basically by profit, driven by whoever had the biggest bucks to shout that message. But then something changed. 50 years later, the internet. And I picked that year because that was kind of the tipping point. At that point, we started to have 10 million computers compared to just a few 100,000 just 3 years prior. The internet comes out, and then mobile computing comes out, and broadband internet comes out, and then social media hits. Right? So now, when you need a contractor, where do you go? Right? You see like Angie's List. If you're looking for a restaurant in Phoenix, Arizona, do you look in the yellow pages? Or do you post it on Facebook, some friends say, I'm going here, give me a recommendation. If you are considering hiring someone, you go to LinkedIn, you look at their profile, right? So social media and broadband communications is bringing us back to 1926 again. So even though there's good and bad with technology, just like there is with anything, but I would argue that we're going back in time. We're going back to that sense of community. Because despite all the negativity you hear with social media and whatnot, there's still, how many of you are staying in touch with friends, family, folks you would have lost touch with if it were not for social media? How many of you have gotten recommendations on what car to buy, what cell phone plan to get, what restaurant to eat at? Okay? So what happens is now the power is being returned to the people. Right? You remember the general store and the saloon. There was no manipulation of the data. If Bubba showed up and told you that Joe the blacksmith was a drunk and didn't do good work, you didn't go get your horseshoes there. Right? Joe could not run enough ads to convince you otherwise. We're returning to that. We look at Yelp. How many of you use Yelp to either leave a recommendation or to look? So we're coming back into pre-1926. Y'all remember the Spiegel catalogs? I called my cousin the other day. I heard a song that I grew up with on the classic rewind station. I said, something's wrong with that station. I'm not that old. But I remember Spiegel catalogs, right? So previously, the big marketers, the big advertisers would send us the stuff, and we would choose from what they wanted us to buy. Who even still owns a Spiegel catalog? Right? They don't exist anymore. There's a couple of books, Generations, that came out in 1992. I think it's Strauss and Howell, yeah. And then Pendulum just came out last year, and I know Roy Williams and Michael Drew. Pendulum was basically I don't want to say a synopsis, but it was inspired by Generations. But the theory is that we go through 80-year generational swings that are complete. We complete the cycle. So basically, what that means is, going back to about 1943, it's what they called a we, or a civic generation. And you've always heard, right, the greatest generation. It was all about what can we do for the greater good. And then you see that swing into 1963 into rock and roll, sex, love, rock and roll, sex, drugs, rock and roll. And then that swings into 1983, the conspicuous consumption, the yuppies, BMWs, right? So we swing through these great pendulums from very civic-minded to very me-minded. So now let's begin to move ahead. 20 years after 83, we're in 2003. So the pendulum is swinging back towards the we. We are now halfway up following that arc. So 2023, based on these two books, and I've studied this for quite a while, and you see it. You saw the talk earlier from Lexi, right? You see, and having 6.5 kids, I see this as well. These kids are very much focused on community. That's why you see shows out there like Extreme Makeover Home Edition. You see Wounded Warrior. You see businesses paying it forward because they're starting to give back. So 2023 will be the peak of that next we generation. So we're moving rapidly towards that. So that's why I say it's 1926 again, insofar as we can now talk with one another. We are no longer reliant upon big marketers and big brands to tell us what to think, what to buy, what to do, right? We, the individual, have the power to move mountains. Like, what is TED, right? Ideas worth spreading. That's where we're heading towards. That community, like it or not, the old Fuller Brush salesman, press real hard, third copy's yours, that technique of style of selling will not work for at least 20 more years. You need to be focused on how to give back, how to contribute, how to bring society and community back into focus, okay, to succeed moving forward. Some examples, have y'all seen this Dove commercial, the evolution? They show the woman just sitting down, and then they speed it up, and you see how this beautiful but unremarkable woman become unattainable, right? The makeup, they Photoshop, they stretch her neck, they thin it out. Over 17 million views. Dove is in the beauty business, and they're showing you that the beauty we've been taught to believe as real is not real. Anybody seen Poopery? Google this, look it up on YouTube. This is a real business. Over 19 million views, over 4 million bottles sold. It's hilarious. And they're selling Poopery. Kenny Brooks, have y'all heard of him? Kenny Brooks is a young man. He's a minority. He has bad teeth. He is selling door-to-door cleaning supplies. So if I had to guess, I would say he's not college educated. And he has 1.9 million views, and these people bought cleaning supplies from him. And the guests that were over at the house, they bought it as well. Okay? Because he is inspiring, he is engaging, he is entertaining, he is motivational. This is what's next in selling. This is what is today. So I want to encourage everyone, you have the power. Whatever motivated you today, water conservation, music, healthcare, whatever. I would say, look at that, the doctor that we just saw, Harvard educated. They proved that their procedures and checklists reduce death. Right? They're not reducing paper cuts. They reduce death 45%, and people are not adopting it. So I would say the greatest calling is to go back to the beginning and be a person of influence, to persuade, to convince. He did the layman's work, right? He got down and dirty and figured it out, but a marketing firm is what will save more lives than that doctor, like it or not. So do you have the passion and the drive enough to go out and make a fool of yourself? Look at baseball. It's easy to glamorize, but people go in the Hall of Fame, missing 7 out of 10 of their pitches, right? In football, it doesn't matter if it's 4th and 22. As long as you get 23 yards on that 4th play, 25% of the time, if you just are good enough, you can advance your cause. But in selling and in marketing and persuading, we hear no, and we just get rejected, and we crawl into our shells and we go away. Might you have the next best thing that could cause a 45% reduction in deaths if you'll only get out of your own way? If you'll only be passionate enough to go out and make a fool of yourself, potentially, until enough people see the wisdom of your knowledge and are inspired by what's inspiring you. Does that make sense? So what's next in selling and marketing? I'll go back to the Bible, right? There's nothing new under the sun. Good old Ecclesiastes. There really is nothing new. It's all about our take, our approach, our motivation, and that one-on-one connection that you have with the people in your marketplace. But now with the technology that we have, you can reach people anywhere in the world. Sitting at home with your daughter, letting her put bows and ribbons in your hair. Okay? Do you care enough about your cause to let your kid put ribbons in your hair and then make a video of that and then put it out into the world? But that's what society wants to see. They want transparency. They want honesty. Okay? There is, right or wrong, good or bad, there's a blurring of the lines between work and home life. But that's fine. People want to know that you're a human being. They want to see your dog under the blanket trying to get out and the kids giggling. They want to see you as a human being that cares about what it is you're promoting rather than somebody just simply there for profit. Okay, because I learned when I really first started treating selling as a profession in 2006 by a gentleman named Steve Clark. He said, selling is a calling, serving is its purpose, questioning is the process, not talking, questioning, and a sale may be the solution. Okay? So selling really is a calling. The devil had a calling in the beginning, and he made it his purpose to convince Eve to eat the apple. So, do you believe enough in your calling to go out and to persuade and to make the world a better place? You've had a great day. It's up to you now to go take this to the world and make it a better place. Thank you.